The Skylab astronauts took today off. It's their first day off since they went up in space 2 weeks ago, and they started the day of rest by sleeping 2 hours longer than usual.
While American crop production is setting records, some countries in North Africa are in the midst of a drought. The lack of water has meant very bad crops and a terrible famine. Today, the Skylab astronauts sent back pictures that may someday keep such disasters from recurring. The pictures could show unknown sources of water that could make future crops grow well.
Now from Skylab, we're not going to be able to make it rain.
While admitting he and his crewmates aren't rainmakers, astronaut Alan Bean showed how Skylab may be able to find new sources of water for North Africa and hopefully give a new lease on life to many of the people there. The spacecraft has sophisticated cameras which can detect water underground and show farmers the best places to plant crops. The advantage of having the cameras in orbit is the picture taking can be completed in a few minutes. It's a job that would take months with conventional aerial photography. Bean described the view from orbit.
Even before someone on the ground. Now we're coming up to the drought area. You might be able to see on your ground that the ground below, on your TV, that the ground below us is not nice and green like it should be, but it's brown, reddish, sandy color. This drought has been in effect for, or has been with these people over here, these 6 million people, for 4 or 5 years.
Scientists will have to study the photographs from Skylab before they can find new sources of water. For the people in North Africa, that can't happen too soon. George Lewis, NBC News, Houston.
The Skylab astronauts were given medical clearance today to complete their record 59 days in space. Space agency physicians reported the crew was in good health with no reason to shorten the planned duration of their mission.
The Skylab astronauts took more pictures today. They used a heat-sensing camera over northern Mexico, searching for hot spots, underground pools of steam that might be developed as a source of electrical power. They also have lost a spider. Anita, the one that hadn't been able to spin a web, died. The astronauts have 8 days left in space. The wives who, for this mission, were given their own emblem have been following closely what their husbands have been doing. George Lewis has a report.
3 minutes and 15 seconds. We'll play that now and then pick up live over the mirror.
Although her husband, Alan Bean, is orbiting the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour, Sue Bean is seldom far from the sound of his voice. She, like the wives of the other Skylab astronauts, follows the air-to-ground communications at home on a speaker provided by NASA. Once or twice a week, the wives get to talk to their husbands on the mission control circuit. Frequently, the wives are asked what they do to pass the time while their husbands are in space. The wives say they don't have that much extra time to worry about. 5 days a week, Sue Bean teaches a first-grade class at a private school run by a local church. It's a job which takes up all her morning hours. Art is the main outside interest for Helen Garriott, the wife of astronaut scientist Owen Garriott. She has a small shop near the Johnson Space Center where she teaches painting and makes pottery. Her specialty is something called a moon pot, with a replica of the lunar landscape glazed on the outside. The deluxe version has rhinestones indicating where all the American astronauts have landed. Gracia Lousma, the wife of astronaut Jack Lousma, doesn't have any outside jobs, but she says she's just as busy as the other 2 wives. Her hobby is raising horses. She's been breaking one of them, getting him ready for an upcoming horse show. The wives say they're close friends, and often they gather at each other's houses. They claim they don't worry about their husbands that much, even though the Skylab has experienced mechanical problems.
I personally think they're very safe up there, and with all these people behind them figuring out the answers to any problem that might come up, I just don't think there's a thing to worry about.
Between them, the astronauts' wives have 9 children. They say even without all their outside activities, the youngsters would keep them busy enough until their husbands return. George Lewis, NBC News, Houston.
One of the recreational toys in Skylab is a set of darts tipped with the sticky cloth called Velcro. But the astronauts weren't doing too well playing with them in weightless space. They tumbled out of control as they flew, and the crew had to go flying around after them. So, like good engineers, they went back to the drawing board. Commander Alan Bean explains.
So we designed 2 additional new darts right here. One with sort of slightly improved fin area, and the other with greatly improved. Let's see how they work. Okay. It didn't stick too well. Seemed to have pretty good stability, but just didn't stick. And a miss. As you can see, one of the advantages of throwing darts up here is when you miss, oftentimes they come back right to you. You don't have to go get them. Another miss. Let's throw a nice slow one here. Looks like a good one. Good stick, too.
Weightlifting in the weightless environment of space is something of a joke. In fact, it is a joke, as astronaut Jack Lousma demonstrated in Skylab today.
The Skylab astronauts today began the final week of their record 59-day mission in space. Along with more complicated experiments, they engaged in one that has fascinated many a would-be space traveler from the younger set. We have a report narrated by ABC's Gregory Jackson.
America's 3 spacemen proved today that even astronauts are men and all men can be boys on occasion. That's Jack Lousma you see working there so carefully on an upcoming experiment.
Now there's a little piece of Scotch tape that's going to be applied right across the 2 upper wing surfaces to hold the wings in more tightly together. And there we have a completed airplane.
The alleged purpose of all this was to give a graphic lesson in weightless aerodynamics. Of course, some would say, however, that it was just a good excuse to fly paper airplanes after 53 days in the Skylab.
And there's your paper airplane demonstration for the morning.
In case the national Earth audience missed the gravity of all these tests, the spacemen turned next to the barbells. And with what appeared to be underwhelming effort, muscleman Jack Lousma went all the way. The Skylab astronauts come home a week from today. Gregory Jackson, ABC News.
Astronaut Alan Bean and his 2 space colleagues have been in the Skylab workshop for 8 weeks now, and they'll be coming home next Tuesday. Today, Bean checked out the systems in the command ship they'll ride back in and said everything looks excellent.